Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen, guys, the channel that brings you your team every day. If you want your team every day, if you want your daily Rangers fix, you need to hit that sub. You need to ring the notification bell and join the over 940 others who've already done that, guys. If you do that, you set it to all, you will get all the reminders, you'll get all the podcasts, you'll get all the live streams, you'll get all the content, and it's all free. It's all free, guys. I don't charge you for any of this content. I don't ask you for any money. I'm not charging you for any content. You can also find us all over social media, details scrolling along the bottom of the screen as I talk on this video. Well, guys, we've got a few bits to get through today. We've got Malik Tillman to talk about. We've got Ryan Kent to talk about. We've got Ianis Hagi to talk about. We've got Michael Beale to talk about in his news conference today. We've got an awful lot to get through this morning on Glasgow Rangers Nation, on your news update. So where should we start? Well, let's start, obviously, with the young American international, Malik Tillman, the guy who's been on loan this season from Bayern Munich, and certainly someone who, as I mentioned in an earlier video this week, has seemingly divided opinion amongst Rangers fans, with some Rangers fans obviously arguing that we should keep him, that he's 20 years old, this is his first season in professional football, he needs time to develop, that you have to speculate to accumulate, that even if we spend 5 million, which realistic when you think about it is not a great deal of money in today's football, not when you consider English Premier League clubs are spending 15, 20, 25, 30 million pounds, upwards of 80 to 90 million pounds at times on players. Although for Glasgow Rangers, 5 million is a lot of money. That's what they argue. Now, others say, of course, that he's gone missing in big games. He wasn't there when we needed him, that he hasn't performed against Celtic, for example, and isn't worth paying the 5 million for. And that 5 million could be better used on other players. Well, anyway, it was revealed today that Malik Tillman will miss the rest of the season after that injury that he sustained against Celtic in the Scottish Cup semi-final at Hampden Park last Sunday. Tillman obviously overstretched going for a tackle and managed to injure his hamstring. And now Michael Beale revealed today he is done for the rest of this season. Now, what was added to that, obviously, Michael Beale spoke about Malik, and he spoke about his relationship with Malik. He spoke about the transfer. Now, it was revealed today that Tillman has gone back to Bayern Munich. Obviously, he is still their player, and they want to obviously look at the injury. They want to look at the extent of the injury, and apparently are carrying out a scan on Tillman's injuries. So he is actually back in Munich, back with Bayern, and is not in Glasgow. Now, in terms of him going forward and what he could bring to Rangers, obviously, there is talent there is skill there is undoubtedly a player in there. And obviously, I think, a coach like Michael Beale, like Harry Watling, like Neil Banfield, could, I think, well develop that potential and turn Tillman into the player he is capable of becoming. And I think a player that could well, if he continues to improve as he has done, fetch upwards of £20 million, which obviously would be a great investment for Rangers. However, in terms of the conversations for Tillman to move to Rangers, now we know that essentially there is a deal in the loan agreement between Rangers and Bayern Munich that if both clubs are in agreement, which they appear to be, that a transfer is possible. However, as part of that agreement, it needs to be the player needs to agree to the move. The player needs to be happy to come to Rangers, happy to commit long-term to the club. He said, Michael Beale did say today that talks were ongoing, and he said, agreed with Malik to park those talks till the middle of May. So we won't see any developments on the actual transfer until the middle of May. Now, there have been news stories in the paper that Tillman is not happy in Glasgow, that he wants to return to Munich, that he wants to have a crack at Bayern Munich and crack at breaking into Bayern's first team. Something, obviously, which will be exceptionally hard given the standard that Bayern expect and the standard of play that Bayern Munich has. Michael Beale did mention today that him and Malik have, in his words, are in a great place on a personal level, and that Malik has a very high ceiling and talks would be ongoing. So I think it's obviously very much down to Malik what happens next, whether he does come back to Glasgow, whether he does rejoin Rangers, or whether he does, in fact, stay at Munich and try to, as has been rumoured by some papers, that he would like to have the opportunity to, compete for a place in Bayern's first team. I think he will struggle at this point in time to actually, get that. To get that place, I just think that at the end of the day, he is a very young player. Bayern obviously have a very high standard, and yes, he has done exceptionally well. In terms of how he's done this well, done in the Scottish Premier League, but breaking into the Bayern Munich first team is a completely different thing. Okay, let's move on now to talk about Victoria's favourite, Ianis Hagi. Ianis Hagi was obviously put up at the press conference today, and he said that he can only he can only focus on what he can control after being questioned about Rangers' impending overhaul. Obviously, Ianis Hagi has been out for a substantial amount of time with that injury that he sustained. He did play the last few minutes of the semi-final against Celtic, coming on as a substitute for Alfredo Morelos. Apparently, Hagi, he said, has enjoyed working under Michael Beale, since his arrival. As well, Hagi did sign a contract extension with Rangers in December. In the fact that he would be looking to obviously play minutes. Hagi, speaking to the press on Friday, said, "Look, I think everybody knows publicly that it's going to be a big change in the summer. What I can talk is about myself and what I can control. So for me, it's 5 games with Rangers and 2 more games with the national team to try to get the best out of it, to try to build up really good fitness in these 7 games and have a really good, strong off-season. I won't really take off too much time, probably a week plus or minus, and then just focus on my football because I've been away for a year. Basically, this is what I can control, and I think everything else is down to the board, to the gaffer, and I think that's a question for them." Hagi very open, I think, there that he wants to play, that he wants to get minutes in the first team, that he wants the opportunity to play. And personally speaking, I can't see why Ianis Hagi can't play a part in the next 5 games. We don't want to see the likes of Kent Morelos. We don't really want to see those players that have failed this club. Yes, you could argue that Hagi is one of those players that may have, but I think that would be harsh given the amount of time that he has missed. Now, I know there are some fans out there that doubt his ability to bounce back from that injury, that worry that he will not go through with tackles, that he will worry about obviously re-injuring that knee. But I think, given what Ianis has said and given, how he's talking about his desire to prove himself at the club and obviously have a strong pre-season with the club, I think that Ianis is determined to improve, to do well, and to have an influence on this team going forward. So I would like to see Ianis given an opportunity over these next 5 games to go and do that, and that's certainly something Michael Beale spoke about. Whilst not directly naming Ianis Hagi, he did speak about other players getting an opportunity, and we will talk about that when we talk about Michael Beale's press conference. Hagi obviously is a very skilled player, very talented player who, during the 55 title season was an exceptionally important player. And obviously with the departure of Malik Tillman now, it does open that spot on the team for that creative influence at the front of the pitch. Hagi could be that person who could come in and replace Tillman. He certainly has the skills to do that, as he proved, as he has proved on the 55 title season, as he proved before he was injured in the Europa League run. So, is he a player we want to see? Yes, I think he is. I think, he has something to prove. He's still under contract. Obviously, as we know, he agreed that contract extension. And yes, he has been linked with moves away from the club to Turkey, to Spain, and to England. But, we need to let him prove himself. And even if he is going to move away, good performances over the next 5 games will only increase his value. So, it's a bit of a win-win situation for the club going forward. So, I think it's very interesting what Ianis had to say. Okay, so let's move on now to talk about Michael Beale and his press conference with the media today. Obviously, as always, Michael Beale on a Friday spoke to Glasgow Rangers media ahead of the game at home at Ibrox on Sunday against Aberdeen. Now, obviously, it's a bit of a revenge game, isn't it? A bit of a fight back game as Rangers seek to avenge that 2-0 defeat that they suffered up at Pittodrie against the team from the Granite City. Beale was questioned on a range of different topics, right from the semi-final to transfer moves, to Tillman, which I've already talked about, to Kent and Morelos, to contracts, to fitness of players, and lots of interesting stuff came out of that press conference from Michael Beale. Michael Beale talked about the fact that the team need to bounce back from a couple of bad results. He talked also about the fact that, there was that rivalry against Aberdeen. I think it's probably more them on us than us on them. Obviously Celtic is our main rivalry. I think, obviously the rivalry for Aberdeen is very important. They have that 4 cup finals a year against us, don't they? The 4 games they get so up for the rest of the season. And personally speaking, if I was an Aberdeen season ticket holder, I would be exceptionally disappointed with my team and the fact that they can only seemingly get up for 4 games a season. Obviously, Barry Robson has been given the job on a permanent basis now, so continues to have something to prove going forward. So Beale definitely, speaking about the need to bounce back from those bad results is... I think, right, it's correct. We do need to bounce back from back-to-back defeats against Aberdeen and Celtic. Now, Michael Beale did say that the team, in his opinion, had a strong performance against Celtic on Sunday. I don't wholly agree with that. I think it was a disappointing performance. But he's going to come out and say that. He isn't going to throw his players under the bus. It did appear a far more conciliatory and reserved tone today than that tone we had after the Scottish Cup semi-final, where he spoke about the need for a massive change. He agreed with Stevie from 4 Lads about a dozen players in and out. He seems to have reined that back again in that very much a Beale type manner. It's something I think Michael Beale does need to work on, his craft in front of the media. He does seem to contradict himself an awful lot. He says one thing one week and then he then next week will change what he's saying. He seems to be someone who very much goes on his emotions to how he speaks. I think perhaps there might be a bit of a need there for him to undergo some sort of media training and some coaching from perhaps more experienced members of staff as to how to deal with the media and how to maintain a consistent message rather than a very mixed message, which will confuse fans and I think confuse the playing squad as well. He was asked about, obviously, what would happen in the next 5 games. And he talked about he would definitely try new things out. He talked about good performances and the need to move things along. He said, obviously, that 1 or 2 would come in who've earned their place by training very well this week and ongoing wise. He also talked about the fact that 1 or 2 have been very patient this year and more than deserved their opportunity. So I think that's perhaps where he's thinking about the likes of Rabbi Matondo and Ianis Hagi. He talked about, obviously, they've had time out, they've missed games, and I know that they will want minutes to go out and prove that. And I think Hagi and Matondo could well be the players that come in and offer a part to play. He was asked about Kenton Morelos and the fact that would they play again for the club. And what he said about this was, I think, what he had to say. Players are still under contract. Obviously, they are still Rangers players. And I think, the vast majority of fans don't ever want to see Ryan Kent or Alfredo Morelos in a Rangers shirt again, especially Ryan Kent after that embarrassing performance against Celtic on Sunday. He said that Kent and Morelos still have a part to play. Again, like I said, that he's got to say that, really. He said no new deals have been offered to Kent and Morelos, and both were free to talk to other clubs. However, they are still Rangers players until something changes. So I think, the fact that they are still Rangers players indicates, obviously, that, that he's got to back them. He's got to talk about them in a positive manner. Personally, I don't want to see either of them play again. I don't want to see either of them in a Rangers shirt ever again. Now for the rest of this season. Yes, in the past they have served us well, but I think they've kind of turned off. And the need really for me is not one out of revenge or punishment. It's more out of a need to, look at what we've got for next season. Look at the players who are staying here or potentially could be moved on if they're not good enough. And we need to use these 5 games to do that. We know that Kent and Morelos won't be here next season, so why, use them? I just think it would be ridiculous. Obviously, he talked about Malik, which I've already mentioned. Michael Beale said that Borna Barisic is out this Sunday and will not play for the team. He didn't actually give a reason why not. He said also that Scott Arfield missed training at the start of the week but did train today and he will be continually monitored. He also said that Ryan Kent would need to be monitored for fitness as well and that he came off on Sunday for, in his words, tactical reasons. Or was it just the fact that he was playing absolute garbage? Talked about the fact that Ridvan Yilmaz will probably get the opportunity to start. And he says, it's all about picking the best team to play. He talked about the fact that Ridvan and Rabbi Matondo had both missed a lot of games due to the fact they hadn't fully been fit. And this was an opportunity for them to go out and impress. So I think we will see a lot of Matondo and Yilmaz over these next 5 games as both continue to, I think, prove to Rangers fans and to the coaching staff that they are worth a place in the team and worth retaining the services of, despite obviously the rumours that have swirled around Ridvan and, perhaps the desire of Besiktas and Ridvan to return to Turkey. He was talked about the fact that, about motivating the players, about, looking at the games going forward. about how they're kind of meaningless. He talked about the fact that obviously, there's no trophies to play for now, and I think through gritted teeth that Celtic will obviously have a good end to the season. He says that the motivation has to be there. You're playing at Ibrox in front of 47,000 season ticket holders. It's a privilege to wear the shirt. And it's about, building for the future. So that's obviously something that players need to think about as they move towards the end of the season. A motivating factor to still put in the effort, put in the time in these final 5 games of the season, despite the fact that they are largely meaningless, other than the fact, obviously, that, when teams come to play Rangers, they always do put on a bit more of a show. He was also asked about Robbie McCrory and the fact that, that he had said about Robbie getting minutes. He said Robbie McCrory is fit and is available for selection this weekend, and that is a decision that he will need to take. Personally speaking, again, I think it's time for McCrory to play. I think we need to see what we've got in this kid. I cannot see the point for the life of me playing Alan McGregor. I would perhaps play McGregor in the final home game of the season as an opportunity to say goodbye, although you can argue that he has got a testimonial on the 18th of July against Newcastle United. So overall, I would want to see McCrory. Why not try McCrory? I think there's nothing left to lose. This is, if you're not going to play him now, if you're not going to give him his opportunity to play now when there's nothing on the line, then I think Robbie McCrory needs to look for another club and look for another way to restart his career, because he obviously hasn't got one at Rangers if Beale doesn't give him, a substantial number of these final 5 games, if obviously he maintains a good level of performance. He said he was also asked about, the players who were out of contract and had contracts been offered to them. He did say that 1 or 2 had been offered contracts, that he wasn't prepared to offer names until deals had been agreed. But many people are rumouring that one of them could well be Ryan Jack, given what he said about Jack in the past. He's talked about the fact that he has a clear plan and he just needs to execute that plan. They also talked about the fact that big decisions have been made at board level in terms of departures and arrivals and obviously still spare spaces. He said, he was being kept up to speed with it and he was supremely confident in the board in taking the right decisions. He also talked about the fact that, that he was excited for players coming in, excited for the future, given obviously the Rangers have the very early opportunity to qualify for the Champions League, which I think starts in June time, when Rangers will need to hit the ground running in terms of those 2 ties that they have, 2 qualifying rounds, which could well be okay, or could be an absolute complete nightmare if you draw one of the French teams or one of the Dutch teams. He was very excited and energized by the recruitment process and was obviously still continually working on that. He talked about the fact that since he's come in November, in his words, the team have performed at a decent level. I would wholly question that in a number of games and a number of performances, particularly in the old firm. But obviously, like I said, he does have to say that in a way. He was asked about the youth team game the other night, where unfortunately Rangers did lose 6-5 to Celtic. He was asked if he'd watched that game. He said that he hadn't watched it live as he was at another game which had been pre-arranged, but he had watched the game back and his staff had watched the game. He said it was a bit of a typical boys game on a big pitch. And I think what was interesting in particular to pick out from that, given obviously the likes of Zach Lovelace played in that game, is that they are unlikely to play this season. He said their opportunity will come in pre-season. He said they have had opportunity to train with the first team and be on the bench, but didn't seem to offer any hope of the likes of Bailey Rice or Lyle or Lovelace starting in the first team anytime soon. I think, if it's going to be young players, it's more likely to be Leon King, Alex Lowry, Adam Devine and Robbie McCrory, perhaps even Yule, rather than obviously the likes of Zach Lovelace, which I think is a little bit disappointing. Obviously, we would like to see what Zach Lovelace has to offer. I think especially given the fact that Lovelace, has played first team football for Millwall in the English Championship. He was trusted to do that. So obviously interesting there indeed. So that's what Beale had to say in his news conference today. Obviously, as Rangers continue to build towards that game at home at Ibrox against Aberdeen, a revenge mission on Sunday. Well, guys, that's the latest news from Glasgow Rangers. If you've enjoyed the news, if you've loved the content, please hit that like. Guys, if you want your daily fix, if you want your team every day, please hit that sub, please ring that notification bell. And remember, if you want to get us on social media, anywhere on the bottom of the page now, scrolling along, you can find our email address, our Twitter location, our Instagram, our Facebook. You can even buy Victoria and I a coffee if you want to see fit. That address is also on the screen. Well, Rangers fans, thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. This has been your daily news update brought to you, remember, 7 days a week, guys. Not many channels bring you you those news updates 7 days a week. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm back to speak to you very soon here on the channel, here on Glasgow Rangers Nation. Hit that sub, guys.